Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Roundup. I am your host, David Fox. With me, as usual, is my co host, UberHansen, and we are here live to talk about two things and probably some other stuff that we get sidetracked by, but mainly two things. The first of which is the Buffalo Bills defeating the oft hated rival Miami Dolphins on Thursday Night Football, in addition to previewing next week's Monday night matchup on Monday Night Football, obviously, uh, which is in Buffalo and against the Jacksonville Jaguars. It is going to be an interesting matchup. One which you might look at the records and be like, wow, this should be an easy win. But we have all been fans of the Buffalo Bills long enough to know there's no such thing as an easy win for the Buffalo Bills. Before we get into all that, first, Uber, how are you?
I'm wonderful. The Bills absolutely demolished the Dolphins, which is something I wanted to see, but wasn't necessarily sure would happen. Now I think in the future, I don't care. If they play the Dolphins, I'm going to predict a blowout every single time. And now I get to play my favorite. We get to play my favorite team with my favorite quarterback in the world, the Jacksonville Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence in this upcoming Monday night game.
Have you in your life ever felt more vindicated by a take than like over this weekend with your I hate the term generational talent than after seeing Trevor Lawrence start 0-2 and the Jaguars looking pretty pitiful to get to 0-2, and then obviously Caleb Williams has struggled to get to 0-2, or no, they're 1-1, but looked he was not really responsible for that one win.
Yeah. I feel vindicated. Dashboard confessional. That generational is a term that definitely should not be used over and over again. The only person throwing a wrench, I guess, in that conversation is Saquon Barkley, who plays tonight. That being said, one good game does not make you a generational talent. And the early part of his career, he wasn't exactly generational. So I still feel vindicated by that as well. But that being said, watching Trevor Lawrence struggle and Caleb Williams struggle is wonderful to me. And I say this as somebody that doesn't hate either of them. As humans, they both seem like perfectly fine humans. I just hate that people use that term and now will forever hate both of them for that reason.
You have a very very strong bias just towards anyone where that label is applied to, whether it's fair or not.
100%.
Which it isn't. And they didn't ask to have those labels attached to them, but Bryce Young also didn't ask to get drafted by the Panthers first overall. Bryce Young, who has now officially been benched after 2 weeks of his second season, is the right decision, to be fair. But man, that is just a brutal way to start your second season. I do not envy anyone who was born as a Carolina Panthers fan and just sort of feels like this is what we have to do. It's I put out a poll earlier today: which pro sports franchise has less hope or is more hopeless moving forward, the Chicago White Sox or the Carolina Panthers? And it's been pretty split. I think it moved from the White Sox to the Panthers earlier today, which I don't know if I necessarily agree with, but also I can't totally disagree with that feeling either. Obviously separate sports and all that stuff, but still. Anyway, we are not here to talk about hopelessness entirely. We are here to talk about the Buffalo Bills, and there's a lot of hope with the Buffalo Bills now. After an off season of doubt, after an off season of what will they be able to do without this guy? What will they be able to do without this coach? What will they do with this? Blah, blah, blah. Here they are at 2-0 after 2 games. 2 games in 5 days, by the way, because they were forced to play on Thursday Night Football. Meanwhile, the Chiefs get to have Thursday night to start the year, and then a whole 10 days until they get to have the Bengals in Arrowhead Stadium. Both games at home for the Chiefs, by the way. Anyway. A lot of beef with the Chiefs that I have. But before we go super deep into the previous game against the Dolphins and the upcoming game against the Jaguars, we are going to do two things. The first of which is shout out our lovely sponsors, and that of course starts with is it this side? No, yeah, it's this side. It's this side, right? There we go. Okay, so our lovely sponsors, who are the lovely folks who are probably tuning into this podcast and all over the place. OnePass. OnePass is our subscription service. It is a direct sponsorship, essentially, of Cover One. It is the most direct way of supporting us. You get access to exclusive content. You get in-depth analysis, including scheme play and player breakdowns, scouting reports, analytics, Greg Thompson's salary cap breakdown. You may or may not get news about certain players and injuries and all that sort of fun stuff before anyone else does. You will be able to interact with a community of people that are willing to talk about just anything on this world that exists. There is a community in the Cover One Pass Discord that is willing to talk about it. If you sign up at cover1.net, it is $60 a year. It is the best $60 spent on football that you will spend all year. Totally worth it. 100% endorse it. And it's the best way to support us here at Cover One and the work that we do. And we're always very grateful and appreciative of all of our One Pass Club Access members. Sign up today. It is absolutely worth it and totally just the best way to support us as well. So we appreciate all of our One Pass members, and we appreciate all of you who are thinking about and will inevitably sign up later. So sign up today and enjoy. All right. We're also going to do our second thing, which is get into some comments. We have plenty right off the bat. Tim says, let's go. Indeed, let's go. RJ, ever the optimist, says, I still don't think the Bills can beat the Dolphins with this many defensive injuries. I know you're kidding. I know. Just typical canoe. What it do. RJ does say Jaguars will be stressful. It has nothing to do with Jaguars' talent. Some reason this organization has issues beating that organization. It makes zero sense. I mean, I know where that's coming from, obviously, with some of the recent losses that they've had against the Jaguars. Obviously, that, what was it, 9-3 or 6-3, whatever it was, game against the Urban Meyer team. Yeah.
That was ridiculous. Awful. That might be the most embarrassing loss.
It was all
of the Bills of the Sean McDermott era, most embarrassing. Yeah, it sucked.
Undoubtedly the most embarrassing loss. I will fight anyone who says otherwise. I cannot think of a more embarrassing loss than that. And last year's London game was annoying, not just because they lost, but because they lost like 3 defensive starters along the way too. So it was not fun. I don't know if there's like a correlation that needs to be drawn from that necessarily. I don't know. Maybe there's something to that. Maybe there isn't. We'll find out on Monday, I guess. Kyle Salagi coming to the defense of Trevor Lawrence. The 250. How much is Trevor Lawrence's contract again?
Just too much money. Just too much.
We're gonna get into that with Trevor Lawrence and just the Jags in general. But I'm curious, just right off the top, why can't
it's more than Josh Allen? I know that for sure.
It is more than Josh Allen, but that's because Josh Allen signed so long ago. True, it's just sort of like, well, that can't be right. Hold on, let's see. Okay, there it is. Like the total cap number, which includes this year, which is the last year of his rookie deal, I believe. Is, or maybe it's not. I don't know. It's so hard to tell with these stupid contracts. But it's like $300 million or something like that. Somewhere around that range. Yeah. Anyway, just the typical news says, I was listening to Bill Simmons, and Cousin Sal's week 2 wrap up, and they were making a little fun of the Jags. They should make a little more than just a little fun of the Jags, because that was a pretty pathetic showing from yesterday's game against the Browns. Kyle Salaki also says, Uber is a generational game preview writer. And I am inclined to agree with that. Steve Noble says it's unfortunate that QBs today have to be good right out of the box after being drafted. Not all of them do. Some of them get put into a position like Jordan Love, and they get to sit behind Aaron Rodgers, and then Aaron Rodgers gets to become so unpopular that everyone's like, yeah, why don't we see what Jordan Love has? And then it turns out Jordan Love is good anyway. So Chief O'Reilly, I'm going to go with O'Reilly, even though that's not really how you spell O'Reilly. My favorite thing is how stressed I was versus the Cardinals and how confident I was against the Dolphins before the season and how nervous I am again.
Yeah. The typical ebbs and flows of being a Bills fan.
Oh, so true. So true. Let's see. RJ also says the nerves for the Jags goes back to when I was a kid watching Jim Kelly get his career ended by that team. Was that the playoff game? Right? Dude, where the Jags, like, where Tony Baselli, like, locked up Bruce Smith, or however they want to frame that. Tony Baselli should not be the Jags' first Hall of Fame player, by the way. That should totally be Fred Taylor, not Tony Baselli. But that's a whole other discussion for another time.
Yeah, I was too young for that, because my first football memory, literally my first memory, is the Music City Miracle in 1999. So that's the first thing I can remember in my lifetime.
Are you okay? This actually explains a lot of your fandom, I think.
No, I'm not. And then Willie Parker. Yeah, a lot of pain.
I was too young for any of those things. I wasn't into football until like 2008. So, but I did get to experience the 2010 draft, which is just about the worst collection of players I've ever seen in a draft class. Except for maybe the 2013 Jets, who had like 14 picks, and the best one of them was like Quincy Enunwa.
Oh, Quincy Enunwa. Oh, that's quite
good player, but like that should not be your best draft pick out of a class.
Oh man, that 2010 draft.
Dude, it's so bad. Like CJ Spiller like had one good year, and like God bless him for it, but like Terrell Troop, Alex Carrington, Ed Wang, Arthur Motes was like fine-ish, sort of, if you squinted well enough. Danny Batten and just bad. Everything about it was bad. Darnold looks like a solid QB now that he has a solid offensive mind mentoring him. Hey, we love a 7th-year breakout, don't we? It's not a breakout.
I refuse to believe that Sam Darnold's good. I will never accept that, because he is bad. He's had 2 good weeks, but I refuse to believe he's good.
I think he'll be fine. Like for this season, I think he'll be fine. And let's be fair, the expectations are very, very low for Sam Darnold, given all the circumstances around what has transpired in Minnesota. But also, I think he'll be fine. And I would wager a healthy sum of money, if I gambled, that he will make a healthy sum of money this offseason based on what he's going to do this season. So,
of course, with the Jets or the Bills' luck, though, like they get the Vikings 2nd-round pick next year, which I thought would be like a top 5 pick in the 2nd round, and Sam Darnold's going to go there and lead them to like a 10-7 record. They're going to be a wild card going into the playoffs, and like we're going to end up with a late 2nd-round pick, of course.
A 2nd-round pick is a 2nd-round pick. I will gladly take any sort of high, premium picks. So I'll take that. Cespinar says someone needs to lose to this Panthers team so I could bring up something to deflect when anyone brings up the Urban Meyer loss. It's actually great. I kind of love that. It's somehow going to be like when did the Saints play the Panthers first? I gotta look at it, because the Saints have started off so hot, and it's kind of boggling my mind that it almost feels inevitable that they're gonna lose to the Panthers at some point. What is this? Okay. It's not okay. Like week 9.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. That seems appropriate. Maybe November rolls around. Somebody figures out what's going on with the Saints. I will say though, even if like the total like production that the Saints are getting offensively right now is probably at its peak, I can't imagine it getting better from there. That being said, however they regress throughout the season, Alpha Kamara does look good, and that makes me happy because he was just such a good player for the first couple of years, and he had just like, going through in the post Drew Brees era, it was sort of like, this is sad to see someone who was like genuinely talented just get sort of wasted. And it seemed like we were kind of past his prime years. And then it's like, nope, he's just good. He's just good. And it's fun to see. It also helps that I have him on one of my fantasy teams. So, so let's see. Steve Noble also says, Uber, would Josh have been good right out of the gate if the Jets drafted him? I mean, no.
He wasn't good out of the gate when the Bills drafted him.
Right.
So, no, he wouldn't have been good on the Jets. Hell no. It took him a couple of years to get good. I mean, I actually think his 2019 is a bit underrated, but he still wasn't good. Like, he wasn't great. He was fine in 2019, but 2018, he was bad. I think people just kind of gloss over that or forget that. He was a really good runner in 2018. In fact, he should, in theory, have been the first quarterback ever with 3 straight 100-yard rushing games, but I think he kneeled it, so he finished one of them with 99 yards.
That's so lame.
Yeah.
First of all, I hate that happened, but I love that you just know that right off the top of the dome. Oh, yeah. That's just like such a classic Uber take for you to pull out.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this today because someone last night, like right before I went to bed too, which made me mad, which did not help with my sleep at all. But like they were, Josh Allen as a rookie was way better than Caleb Williams as a rookie. I'm like, it's kind of comparable, honestly, because I said that 2018 Josh Allen, or like rookie year Josh Allen, reminds me of rookie year Caleb Williams. And they're like, oh, well, rookie Allen could do this and that. And I'm like, what? Like, do you remember what rookie year Josh Allen was like? That was not fun at all. And the next year in 2019, like you said, it wasn't amazing, obviously, but it was a very, very clear step forward from where he was. And he did some really good things. I mean, John Brown had his best season as an NFL player with Josh Allen in 2019. So there were good things, but I also don't think anyone expected the leap he made the year after in 2020 to have actually happened. And then it happened. I don't know if you were necessarily like the doubter that I was of Josh Allen, like when they drafted him and all that. But I distinctly remember in 2020 when he hit John Brown for that like game sealing touchdown in week 2 against Miami to go over 400 yards for the first time of his career. I was like, oh my God, they got him.
They got him. They found him.
They got the guy. This is the guy. I am in this reality. It's real. It's crazy.
Yeah. I honestly, for me, I think like 2018 was fun just because he was so unique. I hadn't seen anything like him in a Bills uniform, really. I mean, Tyrod was a great mobile quarterback too, but Josh was just a different runner completely than I had ever seen in the NFL. And then actually in 2019, even though he played better, I had a little less fun with it. I had a friend who had said to me, if Tyrod was making these mistakes, we would, be all over him for it. And I was like, you're right. So I started being more critical of Josh in 2019, but like you in 2020, I was like, what the hell is happening? I've never seen a Bills quarterback. Like, I think Drew Bledsoe in his first year with the Bills was really good. And that was the last time I remember competent quarterback play for the Bills consistently at that level. And then saw Josh Allen literally take the leap of all leaps and become absolutely elite, essentially in the span of 3 years. It was insane. I'm still like dumbfounded by it.
Yeah. Speaking of elite play, the Bills defeated the Miami Dolphins 31-10 on Thursday Night Football. And while it ended up as a bit of a somber tone, given the unfortunate injury to Tagovailoa suffering another concussion in a pretty brutal hit that involved Damar Hamlin of all people, right? Yeah. To have this happen with a tough scene and kind of put a dour note on what was obviously a really great win for the Bills. It was still a great win for the Bills, and they looked good doing it. And especially when you look across the league throughout week 2, I don't know. I assume that you're like me and that you are somebody who's just glued to the couch on Sundays, especially when the Bills aren't on and you can just like relax and watch football and actually enjoy football without being stressed.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what I did. Like there was a point where I had the multi-view on the TV screen and the multi-view on my phone for that early slate when there were 10 games. What are we doing, NFL, by the way? 10 games that went too much. But I was going back and forth. I was like, okay. Yep. All right, cool. But there are a lot of sloppy play in week 2. A lot of sloppy play, like kind of across the league. And it made me feel better about the Bills and how they've looked in the first 2 weeks, which is not to say that the Bills have been like perfect or elite in that sense of play, but also they've looked better than I would say a majority of the teams across the league right now. And their record shows that as well.
Yeah, I think like in my head, I was like, I kind of need them to win the first 2 weeks because I need that. The schedule gets a little rough at points. So let's get 2-0. But I wasn't fully confident. I was more leaning on like, I could see 1-1. The Cardinals could catch them, like surprise them. And actually the Cardinals almost did. And then who knows with the Dolphins. And the Bills instead go out and beat them both, beat the Dolphins in dominant fashion, should have beat the Cardinals in dominant fashion had it not been for a kickoff return touchdown. And then it makes me feel all the more better that the Cardinals went out yesterday and dropped 41 points, I think, and looked like this super elite offense that our defense essentially shut down. So suddenly I start to look at the Bills and like you watched a lot of sloppy football yesterday, and I started thinking to myself, like, all right, who are the elite teams in the NFL at this point? Like, who are the best teams? You have to say the Chiefs just because you have to say the Chiefs. And then after them, it might be the Bills because the only other options are the 49ers who lost, the Lions who lost. I'm not ready to put the Saints in the elite category.
Yeah.
Maybe the Eagles tonight can go out and make another statement. Or I think with a win, I'd probably put them up there in that elite
at least
category.
In the conversation.
Yeah. And so it's crazy to think that the Bills, who a lot of people were picking, some national nonsense artists were putting as the third best team in the AFC East, now basically are at a point where people are like, oh, of course, it's the Bills Chiefs again for like the 5th year in a row, essentially. It's those 2 teams, and then everyone else is chasing them.
Yeah, and it might be boring, and it also might be frustrating to fans of both of those teams, right? I'm sure Chiefs fans are looking at Buffalo and like, can't we just like get a year where we don't have to deal with this team and they're inevitably beating us in the regular season? Yeah. I'm sure they feel fine after winning 3 Super Bowls, but also I would like to think that they get at least a little bit irritated by the fact that Buffalo is as successful as they are in that regard. But whatever. Some unfortunate news coming out of that Miami and Buffalo game is that Terrel Bernard, starting Mike linebacker for the Bills, is going to be out for several weeks. On the one hand, it's unfortunate news because you don't want your starting middle linebacker to be out, especially when your starting nickel corner and your starting weak side linebacker are all already out. You don't want your whole second level of the defense to be completely decimated. That's call me crazy, but I think that's a little thing that most teams don't want. That being said, there was definitely some speculation just like from the initial play that it happened on that it looked like it could have been a torn pectoral instead of just a strained pectoral. So for me at least, I was like, okay, I will take a month of discomfort versus an entire year of no Terrel Bernard and no Matt Milano. I'll live with a month.
Yeah, it's just kind of crazy. Like these injuries every year, just so ridiculous now, and it's crazy to think that like we lost Matt Milano before the season even started, and it was like, well, all right, we have Terrel Bernard, Teron Johnson, so they can pick up that level, and then Teron Johnson goes down as the one player we're like we can't lose, and we're like, oh no, well at least we have Terrel Bernard, and then boom, he goes down too. You have those 3 guys down, and the Bills did what they did to that Dolphins defense. I don't know if people holistically realize how incredible that is, and especially with what the Dolphins can do to you with their speed and their ability over the middle. And the Bills were just like, we're going to put Cam Lewis out there and Balin Spector and Jamarcus Ingram, and we're going to find a way to put them in advantageous positions and absolutely dominate the Dolphins offense. So yeah, it's really, really bad that we don't have Terrel Bernard and Matt Milano now for an extended period of time. And honestly, when is Teron Johnson coming back? I have no idea what the extent of his injury is. The Bills are essentially slow playing it like, well, we don't want to put him on injured reserve. And to a point, if they were going to, they would have done it before this game. So I presume they're not putting him on injured reserve. So he should be back within the next 2 weeks. But what's his injury? I still don't know what it is.
Yeah, they've always been a little cagey about certain injuries versus others. The fact that they didn't put him on IR makes me feel relatively confident. If I were to guess, probably week 4 is when he might come back.
Ravens.
Because I don't know if they necessarily feel like they have to bring him back against the Jaguars, given how the Jaguars have been playing. I don't feel like they necessarily, and especially not just with how the Jaguars have been playing, but also with how Cam Lewis has been filling in for him. Because Cam Lewis has been playing pretty darn well for, like, when you're thinking about, okay, what do I want out of my backup nickel corner? I feel like Cam Lewis is hitting all the marks for that. And I think that is exactly what you want. So I think they feel confident in what they have. I think that I'm more concerned about like Balin Spector and Dorian Williams being the starting linebackers against this team, even though they're fine in a certain regard. Like they're fine coming down against the run and they can hit and they can be physical, which is good, right? Because given the way that the NFL is starting to shift back towards running the ball more, that's fine to me. But you also know that the middle of the field is going to be very difficult for them to cover. It's just not in their repertoire to be these good, solid coverage linebackers. Maybe they surprise us. I'm also not waiting and holding my breath for them to be like really good, like coverage linebackers. It's just it is what it is. I'm willing to accept that they're, downhill thumping, run stopping linebackers, and that's enough for me. They'll live with that because what they're getting, because now they're healthy at safety, right? Because all of the safeties were active in that game against Miami. All of them ended up getting run in that game against Miami. So, including Cole Bishop, who had a tackle and a pass breakup. Almost, honestly, I feel like if he had just like a tick, like a little tick faster, he could have gotten his first interception as an NFL player.
I think it was close to a Cam Taylor-Britt type pick too. Like
it wasn't like he that far off. Which, by the way, that Cam Taylor-Britt play was insane all on its own. The fact that he did that while covering Xavier Worthy after shit talking him earlier that week was just so perfect. I could not add love to that any more than I already do. Walter S. says, not really impressed with the Texans. I know they play 2 really good defenses in the Colts and Bears, but they don't particularly scare me. They have a suspect secondary minus Stingley. I think that's a totally fair read on the Texans right now. They, when I saw the stat line that Caleb Williams had 2 interceptions, I was like, really? It felt like a lot more, didn't it? It felt like a lot more turnovers from Caleb Williams. And honestly, it probably should have been, but penalties really killed the Texans, so they need to clean that up for sure. But defensively, they're fine. They're fine, but they're not great. It seems more, and in fairness, they didn't necessarily do a ton to improve the defense, right? And we've talked about this during the offseason, right? Like they let Jonathan Grenard go, and then they brought in Danielle Hunter. Okay. But basically swapped teams because Grenard went to the Vikings. And then they lose Blake Cashman, who had a great season for them at linebacker. And then they bring in Azeez Al-Shaair, who should have been ejected and wasn't because of this very strange technicality that the NFL is basically like, actually, because there was no flag thrown on the play, we can't review it to see who can be ejected or not. So I'm telling you right now, someone else is going to take advantage of that. They're going to see if there's a flag, and they're going to be like, crap,
Yeah.
eat that.
Yeah.
Like, what is this? Like, what are we doing? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. But yeah, they're a scary team on offense because I feel like they can run the ball now with Joe Mixon consistently when they want to, and they have a plethora of weapons at wide receiver. And obviously, CJ Stroud is great. I think last night also showed that. But ultimately, they're beatable, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're beatable.
Yeah, I thought I would be more impressed by them just because they seem to just stack talent and, elite talent all over the roster. And then, like, watching that game last night, like 19-13, I think it was. I was like, what do you? I don't know. It just felt like you should put up more points and slow down the Bears more. And then early in the game too, I did find myself a little bit like Stroud threw a couple balls that like got popped up in the air for a long time. One was at the line, and all the defensive tackle had to do was look up, and it would have fallen right in his hands. Instead, he started like blocking the offensive lineman or something.
They're not used to looking up. They just want to hit people. Yeah.
True. So like Lady Luck's on their side a little bit. I'm not saying that CJ Stroud's bad by any means because I think he's good, but sometimes the ball just kind of bounces your way, and you talked about the thrown punch that should get. It just seems like everything's kind of working right now, but they're still not blowing out these kind of bad teams. Like the Colts might be bad. I'm not quite ready to say that. They might be. Yeah.
And I don't want to admit that because my bold prediction on the Greg Thompson Sports Show was that the Colts were going to be the 2 seed, and now they're 0-2, and I'm like, this is looking dicey right now. Yeah, not a fan of what's going on in Indianapolis. But and yeah, it is September, and I think that the fact that the Texans have won their 2 games, despite not great, overly consistent play, is probably testament that they are a good team. They're just, it takes a little time, especially now with preseason being shorter and not as many teams playing their starters in the preseason and getting all those reps. September ends up being just sloppy. So I would expect the Texans to basically be the team that I think people are kind of expecting them to be, maybe a little bit less, but I think they are a good team. I think that especially in that division, which I think we both felt was going to be a very competitive division, the Texans are the only team that have won a game in that division right now.
Yeah.
The Titans are 0-2, the Colts are 0-2, and the Jaguars are 0-2. It is a competitive division in that sense. It is competitive to see who will actually be the worst team in that division. And right now it is kind of looking like
a ridiculous start to this season too, when you think about it that way. Like 3 of the teams in the AFC South are 0-2, and then the Ravens and Bengals are 0-2. There's so many teams that just kind of shit the bed to some extent to start the season. And I looked it up. There's been 32 teams that have started 0-2 since the playoffs have expanded to 17 games, or 7 teams, sorry. And only 2 of them have made the playoffs after starting 0-2. No team that started 0-3 since expansion has made the playoffs, and only one ever, I think it was the 2018 Texans, started 0-3 and made the playoffs. Other than them, it's no one else since 2000. So essentially, the Bengals and the Ravens better win this week. They're not playing each other, I don't think. But if one of them loses this week, the season's over. I think you can chalk it up as it's over for them. So it's crazy to think you could eliminate one of those teams this early and the entire AFC South.
Yeah. Let's see. Happy Wolverine says we owe Jacksonville a beating for that travesty of a UK game last year. I wholeheartedly disagree. RJ does as well. We more than owe Jacksonville a beating. So sick of that franchise. Yeah, it's interesting. We're gonna get to the Jaguars game. Let's kind of condense as much as we can this Miami game. So just offensively, quick stats. Josh Allen, 13 of 19, 139 yards, 1 passing touchdown, 2 rushes for 2 yards. Does that have to do with the hand injury? They probably weren't willing to call rushing plays. I also don't think he was necessarily restricting himself as much but there also just weren't a lot of opportunities for him just because running with James Cook was working as well as it was, and they kept getting short fields. And I'm not going to make too much out of this one way or the other as it comes to Josh Allen.
Yeah, I did think they were trying to protect him a little bit, and to some extent protect him from himself, just because they didn't want him to get hit. He seemed to be releasing the ball pretty quickly. And even when he ran, I felt like you could kind of see, and this could just be my mind saying this, but it felt like you could see him be like, "Ooh, I kind of want to do something. I should just slide," and went down. So it did worry me. He did fumble that one ball because it did hit that gigantic glove he's wearing on his hand. And after the game, he talked about how he can't feel the tips of his fingers. So something's going on. I'm happy that they get 10 days between that game, and Josh essentially took no hits. So now I bet you still see a glove, but maybe a smaller glove until he gets to take that thing off. But yeah, man, he's getting clowned by some Ravens fans of all people. They're like, look at that stat line. That's a bad stat. It's like, dude, he didn't have to do anything. And when he did, he was incredibly efficient. Like, I'm not going to complain about that at all, because we still got the W. So that's all that really matters, I guess.
Yeah. The Bills didn't lose to the Raiders at home. So, yeah, suck it. RJ seems to agree with you. A couple of times Josh looked like he wanted to run and then thought against it. Probably. And I think that also kind of might have to do with how the game was going, right? It wasn't about Josh having to make plays to come back like he was doing against Arizona. It was like, hey, we're off to a lead and the defense is playing well and they're getting turnovers. Let's not force anything while I'm also not feeling the tips of my fingers. I think it's a doubling down effect, let's call it. James Cook, 11 rushes for 78 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 catch for 17 yards and a touchdown. Just a really good game from James Cook. He's just doing what he does. Just doing what he does. He's been super consistent to start the year. Khalil Shakir, 5 catches for 54 yards, rather. Again, super consistent to start the year. And the offensive line, man, they were just pushing and shoving and mauling that Miami front so well. Just exactly what this team has been wanting to do and wanting to transition into. And I wouldn't necessarily say that the Bills are ahead of everyone else in terms of this transition from being pass happy to run forward or run centric, but they're ahead of a lot of teams. They're certainly ahead of Cincinnati, who, like, just yesterday, even though I felt Cincinnati played well in that game against Kansas City, and kind of my fears of what Joe Burrow's injury and stuff might be are kind of alleviated. It's still clear that, like, they want to be a pass first team and they don't take running the ball all that seriously. And just based on the way that the run game is designed, right? So much of it is from shotgun. Like, I don't really get how that team in particular, with the knowledge that has come from like the Rams, right? Like, Zach Taylor was a Rams guy under Sean McVay. McVay has always been a very run first guy. I just don't really get how they're not trying to move more towards that. But that's a whole other subject, right? But the Bills, on the other hand, have made a concerted effort to be like, we're going to run the ball. We're going to take advantage of light boxes, and we're going to force you to come down, and we'll hit you with play action, and we'll work off of that. And Joe Brady, to his credit, unlike a Ken Dorsey last year, will use play action and motion with a purpose, not just to, throw stuff around and do it just because he can. Like, sometimes it feels like Mike McDaniel is doing. It's everything feels very purposeful in this offense with Joe Brady. Everything feels very intentional. It all just makes sense, and it feels married together. It doesn't feel like things are siloed off to, like, this is the passing game and this is the running game, and they don't really mix that much. And that's just sort of how we do things. Like, no, like the offense all works together. And I love seeing that through these first 2 weeks.
Yeah, it looks so complimentary. It's so like fun and refreshing to watch right now. And to be fair, this is the thing I keep doing in like level setting myself is that the Bills have played the Cardinals and the Dolphins, who, in my opinion, going to the season, both had really bad defenses. I know Dolphins fans wanted to pretend like they had a really good defense. I don't think so. I think that's a bad defense. So as the Bills progress here over the coming weeks, like Jaguars, Ravens have a good defense. So I'm going to be a little bit on edge going into that game. But what I'm seeing right now from the Bills offense is just this great kind of mix of all these different things that, like you said, they're all complementary. They all fit together. And going back to the offensive line, like they can just dominate and beat the snot out of you, which is something the Bills needed so bad. They've needed it for years because I felt like there were points where it would just turn into a game where the other team could beat the snot out of us on both defense and offense because for whatever reason, we were a little bit too soft in the trenches. The thing that is getting me more excited than anything is a lot of people I respect on Twitter, Brandon Thorne included, that are offensive line gurus, are specifically identifying Deion Dawkins, and they're like, I don't know what the hell happened this offseason. He's 30 now, and like he's taken his game to a nut. Some of the plays I'm seeing him make, like the highlights, the one I think it was against the Cardinals, where he just like clubs the guy to the ground with one hand. He's becoming more technical. He already has the strength. He already has the know-how. Like it's awesome to. I truly hope he gets his kind of flowers towards the end of the season if he continues this level of play and people are like, wait a minute, that's one of the league's best left tackles, because right now he's legitimately playing like one of the league's best left tackles.
He's always been like a really good, solid left tackle. The last couple of years with Aaron Kromer, it's just been like another step ahead from what he was. And it's really cool to see that. And it shows, again, the importance of like really good coaching. And you see that on the defensive side of the ball for the Bills as well, which we're going to talk about now. That was a great segue by me. Good job. Your boy, Jamarcus Ingram, 2 interceptions, including a pick 6 and a drug test afterwards. Crazy. Like, it was a great game by Jamarcus Ingram, taking advantage of 2 passes that kind of just ended up in his hands, right? The tip off of the Tyreek Hill pass, or the pass to Tyreek Hill, I should specify, to start the game off. And then when Tua just could not get that ball out of bounds.
Arm strength matters.
Oh, yeah. My mom, love watching football with her. She gets very frustrated with Jalen Hurts because he doesn't always throw the ball away, just in general, but especially like she will always say, if you're gonna throw the ball away, throw it away. Don't get it kind of there. Just like it has to be, throw it away. And he did not throw it away. It was a pretty great game from Jamarcus Ingram. Christian Benford, again, one of your guys, just made a solid play on a really bad Tua throw. And I don't want to clown on Tua just because obviously it's a big serious situation with him and his playing career with another concussion that he suffered. But you look back at that game, you look at how that went, and I'm sure there are some people who are thinking about the Dolphin season and thinking, oh man, another sort of lost season and no Tua. What would the season be like with Tua? And it's like, man, I don't know. That he was not playing well in that game. He just wasn't. I mean, it was a genuinely bad Tua game. Not like, he made something like that. He wasn't seeing guys open. And honestly, like McDermott knows how to defend Tua because everyone knows how to defend Tua. It's just, hey, can you take away that first read? Can you anticipate what that first read is? And if you can, and you have that covered, it's really hard for him to work through those progressions and get to where he needs to be. And you saw that night. Yes, you've seen it before. We've seen it week 4 last year. It is what it is with Tua.
Yeah, and I'm higher on Tua than probably 95% of Bills fans. Like, I think he's a good quarterback, but this game, like, it goes to the whole Manti. Do you see the Manti Te'o thing? Manti Te'o's like, the Dolphins don't have a Bills problem. It's like they have a Bills problem, man. Like they clearly do. And Tua has a Bills problem. To some
I'm
extent,
not
I think
gonna lie. I thought by Manti Te'o thing, I thought you were referring to the documentary about him on Netflix. Which, if you haven't watched that, is just about one of the craziest things you'll ever see in your life.
I do need to watch that though.
I've watched it like 3 times. Every time. Anyway, go on.
But to like that point, like Tua he gets in when he plays the Bills. For the most part, he gets in his head. I think the pressure legitimately gets to him and he panics. And Sean McDermott is so good, and Bobby Babbitt now too, are so good at making him panic. They, like you said, you just take away that first read. And it's not even just the first read of the first receiver that he's reading. It's that initial, I'm going to look here. Oh no, he's covered. Now I got to go next. Like you don't have to necessarily take away the player, just the initial look at that player. And Sean McDermott and Bobby Babbitt just did that all night long to a point where Tua was panicking and throwing it to Robbie. What the hell's his name now? It's still Robbie Anderson, but it's Robbie Chosen or whatever.
Chosen Anderson.
Jeez, that's right. Oh my God. Yeah, throwing to him, or I forgot the other guy's name he threw to on a pick. Look, Tua was really, really bad that game to a point where if he had not get hurt, and I hope that he's okay, had he not got hurt, I still think you would have had Dolphins fans leaving that game like, yeah, chalk the season up to a loss. Like, we can't get past that Bills team. So what are we going to do? Like, oh, we're going to go to the wild card and we're going to lose in the first round again. This game, like the mental effect that it had on Dolphins fans and that Dolphins team, like I'm sure those players in that locker room right now are like, we're not going to go to Buffalo and beat that team. Like, so we lost at home. We're not winning the division. Now the best we can hope for is a wild card. And then we probably have to go play in Kansas City again when it's negative 10 degrees and we know we can't win a game below 40 degrees. So it just was a masterclass from Sean McDermott and Bobby Babbitt to a point where it made a quarterback that I think's good look like Bryce Young to some extent, which is not a good thing.
Yeah. Olafub, right? Okay, yeah. Cook touchdown catch was awesome. It was awesome. Spin 0481 says, man, I'm late. I think you all need to start the show over from the beginning. Hey, that's what recordings are for, right? Ralph Wilson Sr. from the grave says, Oliver versus Morse will be interesting. McGovern is looking good so far. RJ says, I remember watching in training camp of 22 and thinking Ingram was the only cornerback that looked out of place. It's amazing what a couple of years on the practice squad could do for someone. Hey, letting someone get coached up. Crazy concept, right? Yeah, it was a really great game from the Bills defense in particular. They did a really good job. Von Miller gets another sack to add on to the season, has looked really solid so far. And for someone where it was just like, I have no idea what we're supposed to expect from this guy, this has been a really good start for Von Miller. It's been very encouraging. Tyreek and Jalen Waddle combined for 7 catches for less than 80 yards total, which is not the first time that's happened against the Bills. McDermott knows how to keep the top guys in check. So that was a big thing for them. Special teams. Tyler Bass, 1 of 2. I wanted to look back at that missed field goal just because it was so far away from the goalpost. I was like, was that tipped? Did he slip on the field? It was not a great field condition. Like, was there something that happened there? I don't know. I didn't necessarily go back and look at it. I may do this after the show, but yeah, not a good kick on that one. But he did make another field goal and he made all of his extra points, which to me is fine for now.
I in the moment, the way the ball looked when it passed the line of scrimmage, it was horizontal. Like it looked like it got hit. And I saw Dolphins fans doing the signal saying tipped it. But I then had people that have gone back and watched and they're like, I don't see the tip. So honestly, I don't know how bad it looked. It looked like it got tipped. And I will say this too. If it did get tipped, if it did get blocked, that's also on Tyler Bass. So it doesn't, take away all his blame completely. Like he didn't elevate that ball enough regardless. I don't know. One miss, I'm not going to be terrified about that. He's actually looked pretty damn good so far this season, and he's like drilling it right down the middle, which is a good sign. One missed kick, it happens to everybody. I mean, Justin Tucker's missed a couple, so I'm not going to be too concerned. Happy with his play more than I thought I would be at this point.
Justin Tucker is 1 of 7 from 50 yards since last year. I think, which is so crazy. And it's making me feel old that Justin Tucker might be washed now, at least for as a range kicker, that is. Let's talk about the Jaguars. We've talked a little bit about the Jaguars already, obviously. They were ahead against the Dolphins before just deciding to lose that game, essentially. They then had an opportunity against the Browns, who looked about as pathetic as any team could have in week 1 against the Dallas Cowboys. And they fell flat on their face, essentially. It was not a close effort, and it seems like how they collapsed last year, particularly offensively. It's like they just picked up right where they left off. It feels like nothing has changed. They've, other than shuffling around a couple of players, like, Calvin Ridley is out, let's bring in Gabe Davis, and adding Mitch Morse as the center. Nothing about the actual output of the offense has really changed, though. And I understand that, you lose Evan Ingram in warmups, right? And that does affect things just because he's so important to the passing game. He catches a lot of passes for this team. It's not like you're devoid of receiving talent either. Exactly. That's the thing. It's like you have Gabe Davis, you have Christian Kirk, you draft Brian Thomas Jr., who had so far has had the play of the season with Trevor Lawrence on a great throw from Lawrence in the back of the end zone against the Dolphins. That was a great play from them. And it kind of made you feel like, oh, maybe Brian Thomas will come along a little bit faster than we're anticipating. And when you have Gabe Davis and Christian Kirk and ETN, maybe this is the thing that needs to allow this offense to be like a true spread team. And then they just didn't do that at all. They've through 2 games that offense has been piss poor. And what's funny is I don't know if you follow JP Acosta on Twitter, big Jags fan, writes for The Ringer, I want to say. Really good follow, has been on Disguise coverage before a couple of times. Really great, smart guy. He made a point during the Bills game that, hey, you can run duo against this Dolphins team. They won't stop it. Why the Jags ran duo in the first half when they were winning and not in the second half doesn't make any sense to me. This again goes back to what I've had issues with Jacksonville, in that we could blame Trevor Lawrence for not being the quote unquote generational talent that he was billed to be, and that's fine. Press Taylor, and specifically Doug Peterson's loyalty to Press Taylor, is going to cost Doug Peterson another head coaching job, because this is all playing out. His entire Doug Peterson's tenure in Jacksonville is playing out almost word for word, bar for bar, with how Peterson's run after he won a Super Bowl in Philly played out. They went to the playoffs. They won a wild card game that they probably shouldn't have won. In Philly, it was against the Bears, who were 12-4 and had a historically great defense, and that was the double doink game, right? Then in 20 with the Jags, that was the big comeback game against the Brandon Staley Chargers, right? And the next year they followed it up. Disappointment. The Eagles made the playoffs, but got bounced immediately. The Jaguars collapsed and didn't make the playoffs. And now we're in another year where no changes have been made. And lo and behold, it's the exact same problems happening again. Yeah. Who could have thought?
Yeah, I mean, it's just all right. The thing is, I think with Trevor Lawrence, there are some valid excuses that can be made for him. I mean, he did have to survive Urban Meyer. I also
Sure.
do think that it's getting very close because, from my understanding of some reports I've seen, there was some heated discussions between him and Doug Peterson during the game, and then in the
Yeah,
press
I would
conference
think so.
afterwards, Trevor Lawrence wasn't particularly happy. That being said, if you look at the Jaguars receiving core and you compare it to the Bills receiving core and say you do this from outside perspective, we're not Bills fans,
Mm-hmm.
we're not Jaguars fans. I think that the majority of people would be like, Gabe Davis, Brian Thomas, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram. Yeah, that's better than Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman, and Dalton Kincaid. Like that's probably better. And then Travis Etienne's a nice piece. James Cook's probably a nice piece. Like I think I could make a legitimate argument that from a skill position, the Jaguars probably have more talent on their roster. And yet Trevor Lawrence seemingly can't get them the ball, which is probably a lot to do with Press Taylor, but like 26 completions in 2 games.
Yeah.
Like we
Oh,
just
it's
watched
bad.
we just watched Josh Allen in a game where he basically didn't throw the ball. What did he have? He had 13.
He had 13. He had half of the completions in
Yeah.
a just sort of, oh, yeah, I'm not,
Yeah.
this is not my game.
Exactly.
I'm just going to do whatever. He had half of the completions that Trevor Lawrence has had throughout the season, which is crazy. Like,
it just isn't good.
It's not good enough.
That's my biggest issue with Trevor Lawrence is it's not even. I'm gonna take out the generational thing. Like he's getting
Sure.
paid, people are talking about him. Like he's a good to above average quarterback. I need to see the production at some point, and he just isn't producing at basically at all right now. Like he has one touchdown this entire season. It's mind boggling to watch.
But like that should not be the only. It's not working. Whatever is happening there is just not working. And I'd like to think that if they made changes in the offseason or if they make changes this offseason, that maybe you start to see that production uptick. But we're at a point now where it's like, hey, piss or get off the pot. And especially when it's a gold-plated pot because you're getting paid $300 million over the next couple of years. Like, something's got to change here. And I do not understand why the Jags and their ownership in particular not only did not feel the need to change anything on the offensive side of the ball, they changed almost everything on the defensive side of the ball, which was a problem last year, but not to the degree that it's like, hey, we need to fire everyone on that side and not worry about the offense. That never made sense to me. And even and I think Ryan Nielsen's doing fine right now as the defensive coordinator through 2 weeks. I think he's doing fine. I mean, if we're going to say that like McDermott and Babbage did a great job against Miami, I mean, Ryan Nielsen did a great job against Miami. What one big, huge play to Tyreek Hill and then some other things here, like, did a good job. Like, and I just don't get how you go into this season thinking it's going to be different. Like, maybe better in the sense that maybe some of the execution problems get fixed. But even then, that's truly just coping and hoping. Like, you don't change anything, so nothing's going to be changed. I don't understand the mentality around Jacksonville right now. And it goes back to the fact that they kept Trent Baalke from the Urban Meyer era. And the fact that they were so adamant about keeping Baalke that they're telling head coaching hires in the interview, like, you need to be able to work. And Trent Baalke isn't on these interviews and they're asking like, hey, do you think you can work with this guy? And it's like, what do you want me to say, dude? No. Like, what is this? It doesn't make any sense. I don't know if Trent Baalke has like dirt on the cons or something, like has some tapes that he's waiting to go public with or something. But that dude's got to go. They got to. We're talking about a situation in Jacksonville where, especially if they lose this game to the Bills, which I think is entirely possible, that you may need to start clearing house top to bottom with this team. And whoever comes in is going to have to be okay with the fact that Trevor Lawrence is the quarterback. And maybe that's fine. Odds are most coaches will look at that and be like, you know what? I think I can get something out of Trevor Lawrence. I think I can do what Doug Peterson, Press Taylor, etc., and especially Urban Meyer were not able to do. I think there are plenty of coaches who feel that way. But the fact that you're going to have to change basically everything and then sell a coach and a GM on the fact that they already have a quarterback in place, that's not like 100% proven from a productivity standpoint. It's a tough situation. It's just a tough situation, especially given the offense and how it's constructed, and the fact that, like, I mean, Christian Kirk on the second year of his contract, right?
I think so. It might be
that.
third. At times going real fast. It's
I
second.
can't keep track anymore. I feel like it's getting difficult for me to remember things. I'm just too old. No, this is his third year, and it was a 3-year contract, I believe. Jeez. So this is the final year of his contract, and he's gonna get paid again. What? I want to know who Christian Kirk's agent is. It's that dude.
It's good.
Smart man.
Yeah.
Smart man got his dude paid. Kind of changed the landscape of how, like, wide receiver 2s are paid in general. And he's going to get another contract. And it's probably going to be a pretty nice one, too. So shout out Christian Kirk's agent, whoever that is. Anyway, all that to say, like, the way that the offense is constructed is so strange. And it's gonna require moving and get maybe offloading some parts, but then now you're digging yourself into a dead money pool and you don't have enough space to dig yourself out of it because you're paying Trevor Lawrence a bunch of money. The Jags have just sort of kind of totally screwed themselves in a lot of ways. And I'll be honest, I don't even think the Trevor Lawrence contract was a bad idea, but you're putting yourself in a bad position because you didn't change anything around it to make Trevor Lawrence better. It's not working. It's not working. It's all dysfunctional in Jacksonville.
I was thinking, I had a thought. I was like, let's say Jacksonville comes to Buffalo and the Bills absolutely trounce them, which very well the Jaguars could win this game because this is a game that the Bills would lose. But in theory, they come to Buffalo. Buffalo wins, let's say 34-14. Absolutely destroys them. I was thinking in my head, I'm like, I wonder if they'd fire Doug Peterson. If that would be like, you know what? We're done. We're not.
It's on the table.
But then who's the head coach? And the only name I actually pulled up their coaching, their coaching roster. The only name I see on it where I think they'd be like, all right, interim head coach is Mike McCoy. And I don't know if they want to make Mike McCoy that I mean, maybe you'd make him the sacrificial lamb for the entire year.
He's fine as an interim coach. That's a perfectly fine interim coach to have. But
because if they lose, if they get destroyed, and say Trevor Lawrence has another bad game too, Trevor Lawrence has complete control of that franchise at this point. Like, they are literally tied to him now for however long. If Trevor Lawrence is not getting along with Doug Peterson, then Doug Peterson will be gone as soon as possible. And it might be on the flight home from Buffalo to Jacksonville. Who knows? It would be incredible to see. There was a couple years ago where the Bills were essentially getting quarterbacks benched and coaches fired left and right. Maybe this is the start of that this year. But yeah, it's not good in Jacksonville. Like, the team itself, it's so weird because they have so much they have talent. Like, I look at their depth chart, there's talent everywhere. There's talent at the skill players. There presumably is talent at quarterback. Their offensive line even has talented players. And then the defense, like, you have no longer Josh Allen, Josh Hines Allen. You have Forside Oluokun. I mean, Ronald Darby's their corner right now, which is not great. But they have talent in places, and they're just not utilizing it. And they just can't get the job done. It's wild. This team is really frustrating from a football perspective just because they have the players to be good, and they just can't be. I don't get it.
They have enough players where they should not be 0-2 right now. They just straight up should not be 0-2. Very easily could be 1-1. Frankly, probably should be 2-0. Given how that Miami game played out, they should have won that game pretty easily.
Yeah.
And they didn't. And then you go against the Browns, who looked as pathetic as any team in the NFL in week 1 and kind of coasted to a win. against the Jags in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Doesn't make it just. It's a bad team. It's a bad coaching job right now. And given the frustrations that are coming out of there just within 2 weeks, I'm that seat for Doug Peterson is getting very, very hot, and something's going to change sooner or later. And especially if they lose to the Bills, and especially if they get trounced by the Bills, it's going to be sooner rather than later, I think. Anything else you want to say about this game or this team?
I guess when it comes to this game, like the Bills starting 3-, the Bills with that win over the Dolphins was such a big deal. But if they can get to 3-0, they should kind of be on cruise control to some extent for the next few weeks. And that doesn't mean, I'm not saying that they're going to beat the Ravens and beat the Texans and beat the Jets. But if they're 3-0, even if in the worst case scenario they were to lose to the Texans or the Ravens, Texans, and Jets 3 straight, they dropped to 3-3, I'd still be here like, they'll be okay. I have no reason to think they won't be okay. If they lose this game, that conversation changes a little bit. Like, I can't have them be 2-4. I can have them be 3-3 and be fine, especially with what's happening with the Dolphins right now. Who knows who's going to play quarterback? I watched that entire Jets game yesterday.
Yeah.
And I know that Jets fans and the national media want to pretend like, oh, what a win. But the Jets are bad, dude. The Jets are a bad football team. And Aaron Rodgers has like, every once in a while he'll sling a ball where I'm like, that's vintage, but it's like so far and few between. He's a statue in the pocket. They're not even really running the ball. What, like, the offense is
Nate Hackett.
It's Nate Hackett. But then the defense, like, if Will Levis wasn't such a freaking bozo, they could be 2-0 right now. The Jets would be 0-2 right now. Like, and it just, Will Levis, you moron. So I'm not scared of the Jets. I'm obviously not scared of the Dolphins. I might be the most scared of the Patriots somehow.
Patriots look spicy.
Yeah.
And we both agreed, like, this is a team that, like, in the future might be good.
Yeah.
And, like, especially, like, later in the season when they've kind of figured some things out, maybe they'll give the Bills trouble near the end of the season because they play them twice near the end of the season. They win in week 1, just playing a really scrappy way against the Bengals, who were just completely unprepared. And they took a pretty solid Seahawks team to overtime. Yeah. This is a spicy team right out the gate. And let me tell you something. The more that they play this way, the more competitive they are, the longer they maintain that, the better, because it means that the feelings on wanting to see Drake May are not as strong. And it gives them time to just bring him along and not throw him into a bad situation. Like this right now where the Patriots are at, kind of the best case scenario. It really is. And they should feel very good right now where they are. And yeah.
And they got that game on Thursday night. I'm telling you, that Jets Patriots game, one of them's coming out 2-1.
Fascinating.
I'm thinking it's going to be the Patriots. Man, that Jets team, watching them yesterday, I just watched it the entire time. Like, this is gross, dude. Like, I get that Jets fans will be happy that they won that game, and they should be, because a win's a win. But in watching that, I don't know how you could have possibly watched that game as a Jets fan or an analyst in any manner and been like, dude, that team is competing for this. They're not competing for the Super Bowl. Like, they just simply aren't.
If they are lucky and things start to, like, come together a little bit better, maybe they're the 7th seed. Right? That's the feeling that I got out of that game. And you know, like you said, there were some throws that Aaron Rodgers made that were good. There were a number of throws, like, pretty consistently, where I was like, it's just low. And it was catchable, right? It was where the receiver was, but it didn't allow the receiver to do anything with the ball. And it happened a couple of times with Garrett Wilson. I'm like, that's the guy you need to be able to put it out in front of him, because he has the ability to just break away from dudes. You have to give that dude a chance, and he's just not. And that just sort of made me feel like there's a real limit on this Jets offense. Is it going to be better and more functional than what it's been? Yes. But there's a pretty clear limit on what this offense can be. And this defense, especially now that they've lost Jermaine Johnson, they still don't have Hassan Reddick. Like,
Dude, and
It's
CJ
not-
Mosley got hurt yesterday
CJ
too.
Mosley also got hurt. This is getting close to being a little traumatic for the Jets. This is going to be an interesting one. This Thursday game against the Patriots, I think it's going to be kind of fun. I mean, I'm going to enjoy it just because I think that it will actually be a competitive game, but yeah, it's going to be an interesting one for this team. All right, we're going to do a very, very, very quick true or rubbish to end this night.
Let's see if it's true or rubbish. Let's go.
All right, first true or rubbish, just going off what we just said. The Patriots win on Thursday Night Football against the New York Jets.
I'm going true.
This was true all after all. Can't believe it. It was true.
Already spoke about it. I mean, yeah. Patriots are spicy and the Jets seem very bland right now.
Bland is probably the correct term, right? The defense is fine, but they're not doing anything crazy. They're not the elite level that they've been the last couple of years. Yeah. And the offense is fine. Like they're a whatever kind of ho-hum, whatever kind of team. Spin and RJ both agree with you. Thank you. Fine, folks. I also agree with you, by the way, for what it's worth. Let's see. True or rubbish? We brought up both the Ravens and the Bengals earlier. 2 0-2 teams. Two perhaps surprising 0-2 teams. One would think, given their schedule, they would probably be at least 1-1. Both of them played the Chiefs, but the Ravens played the Raiders and lost. The Bengals played the Patriots and lost. So this is kind of a two-parter. One, the Bengals will make the playoffs. True or rubbish?
Oh, rubbish.
Ooh. Rubbish all after all. It was all rubbish.
All rubbish. Go on.
I don't the Jamar Chase thing and since I've talked about vibes this entire offseason now into the season, and Jamar Chase, that yesterday when he got in that ref's face, I'm like, that was one of the more selfish things. And I know people are like, oh, that ref got power hungry. The way that Jamar Chase was approaching him, I thought he was going to swing at him. Like, I legitimately thought he was going to throw a punch. And then the ref threw the flag, rightfully so. And it's like, Joe Burrow had to shove him to get him away. That everything just doesn't look good there. And then meanwhile, Trey Hendrickson wanted a new deal, and he's dominant right now. I'm sure he's fuming in the back of his head.
The Trey Hendrickson thing is so weird because he was like, I want a new deal. And then he didn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
It was just sort of weird. Anyway, I wish that the Bengals had actually won that game. And I don't think that that yesterday was like a moral victory for them necessarily, because they should have won that game if we're being honest. But I feel good enough where I'm not quite willing to say that it's rubbish. Maybe Trubbish, however you want to pronounce that. That's kind of where I'm at. I thought I would feel worse about the Bengals after that game. Overall, I feel fine. I feel better than I thought I was, but not quite enough to be like, oh yeah, they'll be fine, whatever. They're still 0-2, and I don't like that for them. RJ says true. True or rubbish? The Ravens will make the playoffs.
True.
This was true all after all. Can't believe it. It was true.
Go on.
It's just it's such a weird start to the season. Like, they could have beaten the Chiefs, they didn't. Mm-hmm. They should have beaten the Raiders, and they didn't. And you still have Lamar Jackson. For all the grief that I even give Lamar on Twitter, he's a very, very, very good quarterback. He's my QB3 in the NFL. That defense is incredible, and they have to put parts together. I think they are missing what's his name? Patrick Queen was an integral part of that team last year, and now this year they're struggling to kind of find some sort of identity on defense. The offensive line is bad. I think they're also falling victim to the I also have very strong opinions about Derrick Henry, but I don't think that Derrick Henry is a good fit on that offense even, and people pretended all offseason like it was, and I think to some extent the Ravens are starting to see oh, this isn't working, and maybe he's lost a step, and blah, 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 all this stuff. I watched that Ravens team, and I'm like, I'm not as afraid of them as I thought I would be, but they're still too good, and there's too much talent on that team for me to possibly say they don't make the playoff. Like, they have to come back and make the playoffs. They just have to. I'd be stunned if they didn't.
I'm going to say rubbish. And here's why. The main concerns that I had with the Ravens coming into this year was the loss of brain power on the defensive side of the ball, with Mike McDonald, Denard Wilson, and Anthony Weaver all going out the door for various jobs. And then the offensive line is suspect. And through 2 weeks, those concerns have been very, very real.
Yeah.
Especially in that Chiefs game where they just kept hitting Rashee Rice over the middle against the linebackers, and the Ravens did absolutely nothing to adjust for it. It just sort of felt like that wouldn't have happened before.
True.
That's not something that would have happened before. And this offensive line is not what it needs to be to help this team right now. And in a division that's very, very tough, even if it's not like high level competition necessarily, I don't think the Steelers are a very real team. I think the Browns are kind of a mess. I don't know. Maybe they find a way, but I'm very skeptical about the Ravens.
And since he's playing a fourth place schedule too, I completely forgot about that. To Baltimore's first
part of it.
And like the Ravens' next 3 games are at Dallas, home against Buffalo, at Cincinnati. Like, there's a legit possibility that they could be 0-5. I don't think they will be.
I don't think they will be. They'll find a win somewhere in there, but this could get real dicey in a hurry. What's not going to get dicey is you thinking about subscribing to One Pass for $60 a year. Go to cover1.net. Subscribe today. It's the most direct way of supporting us here at Cover One. You get access to the great Discord server with all sorts of people and communities to talk about whatever the hell you want throughout the day, throughout the night. You get access to exclusive content, to giveaways, to all sorts of different things. Plus, we have recently partnered with 26 Shirts. If you're not familiar with them, look them up. Great company, great group of people. And you'll get a free shirt. Along with that, you get a decal and a letter from Greg, Aaron, and Eric welcoming you to the Cover One Pass community. If you like this video, please subscribe, hit the like button on your way out if you have not done so already. Share this with your friends, enemies, lovers, and neighbors. Uber, where can the people find you?
At UberHansen on Twitter, also writing for si.com/NFL/Bills. We'll be dropping a matchup preview later this week, and we'll be dropping a rooting interest post on Reddit on Wednesday.
You can find me at DFAUXY or at DFoxy on Twitter. You can also find me writing for si.com for the Buffalo Bills and doing things like game recaps and maybe an occasional article here and there about whatever I want to write about that week. Thank you all for watching. Go Birds. We will see you next week. Bye.